Behind all the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, some celebrities have a lot of dark secrets going on, evil intentions, leaving this trail of horrifying actions behind.
In part 1, we expose the unsettling truth behind 10 seemingly untouchable stars, but today the rabbit hole goes even deeper.
We start off with Vince McMahon, probably the most famous wrestling promoter in history, now one of the most infamous. Pretty much anyone who's been at all familiar with Vince McMahon as a person just wasn't all that surprised about these allegations that dropped earlier this year. And the allegations are seriously messed up. For all the controversy that usually surrounds cases like this involving famous people though, wrestling fans everywhere from all walks of life were pretty much unanimously like, yeah, I could see it. So God, where do I start with this one? Well, for starters, let me just say this is not the first time someone has come out with allegations against Vince McMahon. He's gotten into hot water for a number of things over the years. This case is really just the one that finally seems to have had a real impact on his career. There's a lot to unpack here, but probably the most disgusting allegations came from a woman named Janelle Grant, who came out with this massive document outlining all these awful things McMahon did. McMahon had offered Grant a job at WWE, but incredible mistreatment followed, with McMahon having her perform favors for him and other staff at the company in order to keep her job, and these favors are sickening. Then in 2022, McMahon had pressured her into signing a non-disclosure agreement before leaving the company. She was also to receive $3 million from him in order to stay quiet. This case is so massive we could do a whole video on it, but yeah, I'll just end things there.
Next, we are talking about Charles S. Dutton. Charles Stanley Dutton's life is a real roller coaster of tough times and triumphs. Born in the rough neighborhoods of Baltimore in 1951, Dutton had a rocky start, dropping out of school and briefly stepping into the boxing ring as an amateur. But it wasn't his punches in the ring that defined his early years. It was a deadly fight that turned his life upside down. Dutton claimed self-defense, but he ended up pleading guilty to manslaughter and was sent to prison for 5 years. This was just the beginning of his troubles. After getting out on parole, he was soon back behind bars for robbery and for carrying a weapon, earning him another 3-year sentence. But when Dutton threw a punch at a guard, he found himself facing a staggering 8 more years. While in prison, Dutton's life took quite a sharp turn. He survived an attack that almost claimed his own life, and then he discovered his passion for acting. This new path led him from the prison stage to the world stage, where he became known for his powerful roles in TV series like Rock and films like Alien 3 and A Time to Kill. Despite his dark past, Dutton turned his life around, winning Emmys and earning a Golden Globe nomination, proving that sometimes the most compelling stories of redemption are the ones that happen off-screen.
Ezra Miller, once again. Where do I start? I don't know how Miller hasn't ended up in jail yet. He started becoming pretty obvious that there was something up with Ezra when that video came out in 2020 where he grabbed a woman by the neck and then forced her to the ground. People were like, the hell was that about? Was that a skit or something? Then there was all this stuff going on in Hawaii. Miller got into all these arguments and altercations with people, seemingly at random, then was arrested after throwing a chair which hit a woman in the head. A friendly couple who had allowed Ezra to stay at their home were even forced to get a restraining order after Miller had apparently threatened the two. Then in 2022, all this disturbing stuff started coming out about a relationship Miller had been forming with a woman named Dakota Iron Eyes. The relationship began when Miller was 23 and she was 11 years younger. So do the math. Total creep. And that's not the only allegation that's been made against Miller in regards to someone that age. Miller also went to court on a burglary charge, but no jail time came out of that. I honestly don't know how.
Next on our list today, we are talking about Aaron Hernandez. Aaron, a former star tight end for the New England Patriots, had a meteoric rise to fame in the NFL. His career was marked by his dynamic plays and his infamous pairing with Rob Gronkowski, but behind the touchdowns and the fame was an extremely troubled life. His career took quite a dark turn when he was arrested for taking the life of Odin Lloyd, a semi-professional basketball player who was dating the sister of Aaron's fiancé. fiancé. This crime, alongside his charge for taking the lives of 2 people, which he was later acquitted of, absolutely shocked the public, as no one was expecting there to be this dark side to him. Just days after the acquittal came, Aaron was found in his cell, having taken his own life, a very dark ending to this chapter of crime. Aaron's story definitely did not end here, as his medical examination after death revealed something no one knew. His posthumous diagnosis of severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, now more commonly known as CTE, has sparked debates about the impact of repeated head injuries on behavior, highlighting a very tragic side of professional football that's often hidden from the cheering crowds.
Allison Mack, you might remember her from Smallville if you've been living under a rock since the 2000s, that is, because now she's most famous for being a member of the infamous NXIVM cult. NXIVM was promoted as this self-help group offering personal and professional development workshops, but everything came to light about how messed up this place actually was. It was a full-on cult led by a man named Keith Raniere. Members were manipulated, exploited, and subjected to various forms of torment, and Allison Mack played a big role in the group. She was a high-ranking member who recruited women into the secret subgroup within the cult called DOS, Dominus Obsequious Sororium. And DOS women were branded with Raniere's initials and were blackmailed, having to give Raniere all this personal information about themselves and illicit photos, which he would hold on to as collateral. In 2018, Mack was arrested and charged for her role in the organization. She admitted to manipulating women into becoming part of DOS and taking advantage of them. In 2021, Allison Mack was sentenced to 3 years in prison, along with a $20,000 fine. $20,000 and 3 years in jail for that. Pretty lenient, but she cooperated with authorities and helped get Raniere behind bars, so I guess there's that.
Next, we are talking about Salman Khan. Often hailed as one of Bollywood's biggest stars, Salman had fame not just for his films, but also for his sort of bad boy persona. In 2002 is when things really started to turn and his name hit the headlines for all the wrong reasons. He was arrested after his car hit and ran over 5 people in Mumbai, leaving many injuries and sadly 1 person dead. Initially, he was convicted on charges relating to the incident, but on appeal, his conviction was actually overturned, which led to quite a media frenzy and a ton of debate. But this was not the end of the story. In 2018, Salman found himself in hot water again, this time for hunting a black buck, a protected species of antelope, with the crime taking place while he was shooting a movie in 1998. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but after quite the whirlwind of legal proceedings, he ended up out on bail pending an appeal. Khan's controversies extend beyond the courtroom. His relationships and personal life have been constant for the tabloids, particularly his turbulent relationship with an actress, which ended amid accusations of harassment.
Next up, we have Gary Glitter. If you're like me and, weren't really an adult around 1999, you've probably never heard of this guy. And that's because the music industry has really tried to distance themselves from him as much as possible. Gary Glitter is now in prison once again, and he's been in and out a number of times, and the fact that he's gotten as many chances as he has, it's pretty infuriating. But he used to be a singer. He was big in the 70s and 80s. In 1999, though, Glitter was charged after some incriminating stuff was found on his computer. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out what that stuff probably was. Basically, this guy is just a complete sicko. At the same time all this was going on, he was also charged for adult activity with someone who it was illegal to be doing so with, but he was acquitted of that because it happened back in the 70s. He was then deported from several countries because he tried traveling across the globe to continue his career as an absolute people creep. He'd been in and out of court repeatedly, all for very similar, despicable offenses, but it wasn't until 2015 that he actually received a serious punishment, 16 years in prison. But he was eligible for parole in 2023 and got it. He just recently landed himself back in prison though, because what do you know, he went right back to being the exact same monster he always and will always be. Here's hoping he stays where he belongs this time.
Next, we're talking about Jim Gordon. Once a celebrated American drummer and musician who played with iconic groups like Derek and the Dominoes, saw his life take a tragic turn due to severe mental health issues. This talented artist, who contributed to hits like Layla and worked with legends ranging from the Beach Boys to Steely Dan, had a dark side that overshadowed his musical genius. In 1983, amidst a battle with undiagnosed schizophrenia, Gordon committed a horrific crime. He took the life of his own mother, believing he was obeying a voice in his head. This terrible act led to his conviction, and he was sentenced to 16 years to life in prison. Despite his immense talent, Gordon's life became a cautionary tale about the importance of mental health care. He was misdiagnosed and untreated for his schizophrenia, which led to devastating consequences. Gordon remained in prison until his death last year in 2023, never having sought parole. Definitely a reflection of his ongoing struggle with his mental condition.
Once again, I head back to the world of professional wrestling with Jimmy Snuka. Snuka was big in the golden era of the WWE, or WWF as it was called at the time, in the 80s. He was famous for his high-flying moves and his charismatic persona, but his career will now always be overshadowed by an incident involving the death of his former girlfriend, Nancy Argentino. On May 10th of 1983, after a wrestling match in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Snuka called for an ambulance to his hotel room. Nancy Argentino was found injured and was taken to the hospital, where she died from traumatic brain injuries. The autopsy revealed that she had numerous cuts and bruises. The coroner suggested it would need to be investigated as a homicide, but no charges were pressed against Snuka at the time. Earlier in '83, Snuka had even been arrested for beating Argentino, but she later declined to press charges. Wonder why? Well, apparently Vince McMahon had helped to persuade her not to. Not wanting the negative press it would bring on the company. Always classy Vince McMahon. So despite the suspicious circumstances, the case went cold for decades. In 2013, the case was reopened though, and in 2015, over 30 years after Argentino's death, Snuka was charged. Snuka pleaded not guilty, but his health was deteriorating. He'd been diagnosed with dementia and stomach cancer, and in 2016, a judge ruled him mentally unfit to stand trial. The charges were dismissed in early 2017, and Snuka died later that month.
And finally, closing out our list today, we are talking about Claudine Longet, a once celebrated Franco-American singer and actress from the swinging 60s and 70s, found herself in a chilling plot twist worthy of a Hollywood thriller. Born in the romantic streets of Paris, Claudine charmed her way into America's heart, marrying crooner Andy Williams and hobnobbing with the Kennedys. But her star-studded life took a dark turn in 1976 when she fatally shot her boyfriend, former Olympic skier Vladimir "Spider" Sabic, in Aspen, Colorado. The incident, which Claudine claimed was an accident during a demonstration of the gun's mechanics, led to her conviction. The case, draped in celebrity and scandal, captured the public's fascination. Claudine served a very brief, very controversial sentence of 30 days, choosing to serve mostly on weekends, which was a decision that sparked outrage, and a decision that I didn't know was possible. I feel like I just want to take my jail sentence only on the weekends. Insane. Following her legal battles, she retreated from the limelight, her once glittering career overshadowed by her notorious brush with the law.
Well, I can't speak for you, Olivia, but I'm glad I'm not evil. I'm just me.
I'm just me. I'm just
doing
me.
my thing. I'm also not famous, but
Well, either way, I mean, I guess that's good. But if you were, you could just go to jail on the weekends, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the moral of this story today. All right, guys, that has been our list for today. I've been one of your hosts today, Olivia Kozlowski.
I've been the other one, James.
And we'll see you again soon. Bye.